The year is 1940. Inside a supply depot near London, the silence is heavy with worry. Vast halls meant for war materials stand empty. Planners' footsteps echo on bare concrete. Their clipboards list few incoming supplies, but the needs are endless. Quartermasters, once used to abundance, now watch their ledgers with grim faces. Urgent requests from the front lines go unanswered. This emptiness is a weapon, an enemy siege of resources. The planners huddle under a single bulb, redrawing supply maps, haunted by convoys lost at sea and forests now in enemy hands. The crisis is not about courage or manpower, but a famine of material. War is built with wood, steel, and oil, and one pillar has been kicked away. The men here are the gatekeepers of the nation's strength, staring into a worrying void. The war has barely begun, but already a battle for survival is being waged among these empty shelves. Scarcity itself is the enemy, demanding new thinking and new strength. The scale of the challenge is painfully clear. Victory must be forged from what little remains. The nation's fate hangs in the balance, not on the battlefield, but in the silent, empty depot. We picture World War II as a war of steel, tanks, ships, aircraft, but beneath it all, it was also a war of wood. Timber was as vital as oil or iron, the skeleton of the military machine. Railways, bridges, barracks, crates, rifle stocks, all depended on wood. Even in the age of metal, wood was indispensable for building, molds, and repairs. When timber supplies faltered, the entire Allied war effort was threatened. The flow of wood was like blood in a living body. If it stopped, disaster followed. Tanks, railways, and supplies all depended on this humble material. The war of steel was propped up by a foundation of wood, and that foundation was cracking. The planners knew, without wood the war could not be won. The crisis was urgent, and solutions had to be found fast. The crisis erupted in 1940 as German forces swept through Norway, cutting off Britain's main source of high-quality timber. The ports fell silent, their wood now fueling the enemy. As the war spread, more forests were lost. Soviet timber in the east, teak in Southeast Asia. The world's forests were divided by front lines, and Britain's isolation deepened. The Atlantic, Britain's supply route from North America, became a deadly gauntlet of U-boats. Timber, bulky and hard to ship, was lost with every sunken convoy. Britain, once importing 95% of its timber, was forced to harvest its own forests. The Women's Timber Corps was created, but demand far outstripped supply. The blockade created a material famine. The crisis forced a reckoning. If traditional materials were gone, new ones and new ideas were needed. Survival depended on innovation. With metal and timber scarce, engineers turned to plywood. Ordinary plywood was weak, but new synthetic resin adhesives made it strong, water-resistant, and heat-proof. This super plywood could be molded into complex shapes, rivaling metal for strength and lightness. Factories retooled, and craftsmen skilled in woodwork became vital. Furniture makers and piano builders now built war machines. Plywood was shaped into aircraft fuselages and boat hulls. The plywood revolution decentralized production, making the supply chain more resilient. Scarcity forced change, but that change brought flexibility and strength. The humble sheet of plywood became a strategic asset. Innovation turned crisis into opportunity. The de Havilland Mosquito was the plywood revolution's masterpiece. With aluminium scarce, designers built a bomber almost entirely of wood, spruce, birch, and balsa, bonded with new resins. Its canoe-like fuselage halves sped up production. Light and fast, the Mosquito outran enemy fighters and excelled in many roles. It was called the Wooden Wonder, a triumph of necessity and ingenuity. The Soviets faced the same crisis. Semyon Lavochkin's La-5 fighter, built from resin-impregnated wood, was rugged and effective. Both planes proved that a lack of metal could become a decisive strength. Wooden engineering met the best German aircraft on equal terms. These were not compromises, but cutting-edge weapons. Human ingenuity, pressed by need, produced extraordinary results. The forest became a source of victory. Wooden wonders helped turn the tide of war in the air. Ingenuity with wood wasn't limited to the skies. On the ground, timber built bunkers, bridges and fortifications, turning forests into fortresses. Military engineers used logs and planks for protection and mobility, building bridges under fire in hours. Material substitution was everywhere: dashboards, ammo boxes, weapon grips. Even vehicle bodies were made from wood. Every scrap of metal was saved for where it mattered most. The story of timber in World War II is a lesson in adaptation. Strength was found in scarcity, and survival demanded innovation. When faced with empty depots and severed supply lines, the Allies looked to the forest. Ingenuity and resilience turned wood into a weapon. In the end, it was this spirit that helped win the war.